1 John, the second chapter. We're going to be picking up verse 7 in just a moment. And we've noted in the introduction of this book that John is taking Christianity to a practical reality versus a philosophical possibility. And to do that, he's talking about that which has been from the beginning, and that word beginning is something that's going to be emphasized over and over again, as we noted last week. I think at least one of the points that John makes by using that term beginning or from the beginning is that it can be trusted in. It's not changing. It's still there. It's reliable, dependable. But not only has this logos or word existed from the beginning, it's something that could be experienced, that John himself experienced, and he is there now proclaiming in order. Do you remember the two reasons that he wrote this short letter or sermon, if you will? Those are found in verses 3 and 4. Oh, that's the second reason. That's in 4. Shirley says, so that your joy may be complete, and so that his joy may be complete. So he's writing these things so that you can be joyful, and that he can be joyful in sharing them. What's the other reason? I think this is so important. Fellowship, sharing. He's saying, I've experienced the word, and I'm writing so you can experience, or so that you can share it, so that you can participate in it with me and with God. And so the focus of the book is about sharing God and with people, being in fellowship with God and being in fellowship with people. And so he, as we noted, is talking about Gnosticism, this false teaching of the time, as we're going to maybe get into tonight, that has caused a number of people to leave the church in the time that John is writing. It's this mystical enlightenment that talks about a knowledge that isn't provable, but that is just understood by those who are enlightened. And so John is going to counter that with that which is from the beginning, that which he has heard, that which he's seen, that which he has touched with his own hands. And he's going to give you 3 tests to know whether you are in that light, whether you are part of that fellowship. In other words, and we talked about agnostic, he's talking about Gnosticism. We've talked about agnostics, and today agnosticism is big. And a lot of Christians are agnostics about their salvation. Are you going to heaven? Well, you can't really know. John's going to say, I'm writing that you can know. He's going to give you 3 tests. He's going to give these 3 tests, not once, but at least twice. And so we looked at the first test last week that was in verses 5, started in verse 5, chapter 1, and it went through verse 6 of chapter 2. What was the first test? Yes, keep his word or commandments, right? That is in chapter 2, verse 3. And by this we know that we have come to know him if we keep his commandments. Now, there's 2 things, and this will transition us into the second test. There's 2 questions I have about that. Which commandments? All of them? All of them, Rita says. Yes, so the gospel, the New Testament, that's still, wow. How many of you have kept Jesus' commandments? Okay, we all make mistakes. Can you even get stronger than that? We all sin, absolutely. Can we get stronger than that? Have you kept Jesus' commandments? How about once in a while? Try to. There's a lot of mitigation going on. And Emily's the only one brave enough to talk. Let me ask this real simple question, because I think I can get a yes or no from this. How many of you love your enemies? It's hard. Do you do it? You try? Lots and lots of mitigation.
Not around.
Okay. Good example. So I'll ask again.
When he was up there, it was really hard to love him.
Okay, so I'll ask very simply again. Do you love your enemies? No, she's not going to say anything. Okay, because...
No, actually, I really did try to love him.
Yeah, but try. That's not my question, is it? The answer's no, isn't it? Is that not the answer? No. There's a reason we don't want to keep that, or we don't want to say that, right? And I'm trying my best to make Emily uncomfortable, in part because she'll tolerate it from me for a while at least. But the answer is no. Well, there's two answers to that. Number one, John, as we read in that passage, is talking about a practice, about practicing his commandments. And Emily, everything you were saying was getting at that. I try, I work at it, it's hard, I practice it. And that we can do. And John, in fact, in that passage writes and says, for when you sin, we have an advocate and we have a propitiation, both of which are Jesus Christ, right? For those sins. But our practice is to keep his commandments. Yes?
The Bible says to love your enemies. It doesn't say to try or to, wait, all the things. It says love your enemies.
Yes.
Okay, so if I don't love Buddy Sailor, then I sinned. He was mean to us. Very mean.
That's definition of enemy, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, Jesus would say, bless them that persecute you.
Right.
Yep.
So no matter how you get at it, I've got to love Buddy Sailor.
Yep. Yep. Now, I'm up here in the pulpit like I've got all the answers. We can talk about my life, and then I all of a sudden I'm not so high and mighty and talk to you and say, well, yes, you have to do that, right? Because you
have to do it.
Yes, you do have to do it. But the point is, and this is the point that John is making, when he says, by this you'll know that you know him, that you keep his commandments, he's talking about a practice. He's talking about dedicating our life towards something. Is it sin or is it Christ? And our goal, our aim, and you said all these things earlier, that I try, it's hard, right? And those are the kind of things. Where's my aim? Because it's real easy to give into that, right? To the hatred side of it, right? And so that's why we need Christ as an advocate. That's why we need Christ as a propitiation, for those very reasons. So that's point one as to what happens when we don't keep his commandments. We have Jesus as an advocate and a propitiation, right? Now, we're not making excuses. We're noting what's there for us. The second thing that John is going to get at is that commandment. He's going to make it easy. And I asked Rita, which commandment? She said, all of them. Well, now we're going to narrow it down. And we're going to give a commandment that kind of summarizes all of them. In fact, at verse 7, if you look at, beloved, I am writing you no new, what? Commandment. This commandment is going to summarize, is going to engulf what Jesus taught. So, by the way, I encourage you to read John, the latter part of chapter 13, the Gospel of John, 14 and 15. By the way, because at the end of chapter 13, Jesus says, I'm going to give you a new commandment, that you love one another. He then is going to say in chapter 14, verse 15, if you love me, do what? Keep my commandments. And coming back to 14 and verse 2, he says, you believe in the Father, believe in me. The point is that John here is summarizing Jesus' own sermon, the sermon at the Last Supper. Jesus' point is keep my commandments, love, and believe. What are John's 3 tests? Keep commandments, love, and believe. John is summarizing Jesus' sermon, or teaching on the same topic. Would probably be a more accurate way, is what Jesus did Last Supper. Questions or comments before we move on to verses 7 through 11 to start? All right, would someone read chapter 2, verses 7 through 11?
7 through 11. And brethren, all right, no new commandment unto you, but an old commandment which ye had from the beginning. The old commandment is the word which we have heard from the beginning. Again, a new commandment I write unto you, which things is true in him and in you, because the darkness is past, and the truth light now shineth. He that saith he is in the light, and hateth his brother, is in darkness even until now. He that loveth his brother abideth in the light, and there is none occasion of stumbling in him. But he that hateth his brother is in darkness, and walketh in darkness, and knoweth not whither he goeth, because that darkness hath blinded his eyes.
Okay, thank you. So, your head starts to spin a little bit as you read, and this won't be the only place in John where you read this, or things like this. He says,